Hey everybody, just an update on the ST10 Sears project. Finally got a chance to spend some time today situating the engine. It's a Honda GX390. A lot of you probably seen that I've been planning to run this on this tractor. It's a pretty small machine for this size engine. Given that the original engine did not have an overhead valve type engine, everything came straight up. So with the overhead valve, the head is off to the side, and that protrudes out towards the grill and the hood area. But I have finally got it situated to where I believe it's now in its final resting place. I have bolts loosely placed through the engine, through a spacer plate, and onto the frame. So first thing I'll mention is that I've finally got my tires mounted. The front rims were given a quick spray paint, fresh white, but I'll probably dress those up nicer later. But these are the new Kenda stump cutters, and they're 18.5 inches tall. They are 5.7 inches wide, and they fit the stock 8-inch rims. And those were a nice match and pair for the ATV 25 by 10 by 12s that are on the stock rims in the back. The tractor sits a lot more level now with these. They are the largest tire that I could fit on the front to match these rears, and a couple of reasons why. If I cut the wheel, you can see here that the tire is just barely clear my footrest, and even closer in some cases is the bottom of the engine cover here, depending on what kind of ground you're on, whether it's level or unlevel. The tire could get very close to the engine. So I've got some clearance there. 95% of the time there will be no clearance issues steering at all. So I think I did a pretty good job of selecting the right size tires for this. If I want the front to sit any higher at all, there's always the option of drilling a new hole in the front of the front axle, just a little bit lower. So that would bring the frame approximately 1/2 inch higher off of the front axle, which would give me a little bit more axle articulation if I do that. And it'll also have the frame sit even more level and pretty much in the same exact position as the stock tires had it sitting. So the engine, getting it to fit, this is a 13 horsepower Honda GX390, was no small chore. I'm not going to say that I would highly recommend this swap for most guys. I have the fortunate situation of having pretty much any tool I can imagine at my disposal, because I work for a company that has a full-fledged machine shop, and I can run all the equipment there and borrow it and whatever. So I had everything I needed to use to make this work, and it will work, and it'll be basically a factory fit. But you're going to see some really tight tolerances here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I just showed you the clearance I have on the tires and the engine. If I had sat this engine flat on the engine frame, we weren't going to have that. If you look down below the engine, you'll see I have approximately 3/4 inch of aluminum spacer. So the engine's sitting 3/4 inch higher than the actual frame mount, and that was to bring the engine up high enough that I could clear the pull start cover and have some room there for the tires. That's just step number one. Step number two is up here. I know some of you purists are going to be really ticked off, but this tractor is far from stock. So I had to just trim the front piece of steel off of this area of the frame, which the gas tank can still sit here, and then the battery behind it, but basically this is what I took off. This sat in the front before, but by taking this off, instead of this hanging down there, it allowed me, now that I've brought the engine up higher, to still situate the engine back further because of these ears that are on the engine that would be in the way. So it was either cut these off the engine or cut this off of the frame. This thing doesn't really do anything at all. As I said, the stock gas tank will still sit here. You'll never even see the front of this when the tank is in place, so you wouldn't even know that this was removed. But that's the only modification I've made to this tractor, which I think is pretty minimal. So anyway, with that gone, gave me enough clearance. You can see I've only got about a 1/4 inch of clearance between the engine and the actual frame, but it allowed me to shift the engine back a bit further, and that's necessary because at the front of the tractor the grill mounts down here and it comes out a bit, but maybe not quite enough to clear the head, so I'm gonna have to probably make some minor adjustments, but that's a whole new set of challenges when I get to that point. But if you come around this side, I'll show you the other challenges that we had and why everything is now what I consider perfect. You'll see here, this was a tapered shaft off of a generator. This engine came off a generator. A lot of people, as I mentioned before, are afraid of tapered shafts, but it's only this 1-inch section that's tapered. There's no key in this shaft, but Grainger and a few other companies sell these pulleys that are 2-piece. You got a hub and you got a pulley. They have their own internal tapers, and when mated together, basically as you tighten these 3 bolts, the taper squeezes and clamps down onto this non-keyed shaft, which holds everything in place. So now if you see, if I rotate this pulley, the whole shaft of the engine rotates, and if I pull the pull start, you'll see that the whole shaft rotates. So this is a nice pulley setup, and I got the 3-groove, so you can see I've got it situated where the clutch is perfectly in line with this first groove. Second groove I'm going to use for a real alternator, and the third groove will be a spare in case I want to run a snow blower or any other attachment off the front of the tractor. But basically these 2 grooves will be in use. This one will be to drive the tractor, this one will be for the alternator. And you can see the clutch is in line. Now watch this. When I push the clutch on this side, you'll see how close the clutch pulley gets to the actual engine pulley. It is actually within 1/8 of an inch of touching, but not touching. So it's a perfect fit. And if you look at this part of the clutch right here, you can see that it just misses the engine but doesn't touch it. So the engine is positioned perfectly, and if I were to move this engine a 1/4 inch in any direction, we'd have a problem. We'd either have a problem with this pulley, we'd have a problem with the tires touching the engine cover, we'd have a problem with you know, a number of different things that could be a problem. So this is still loose, it's not bolted firmly in place. On this side, there's one other thing that you can look at that's really a tight fit, and it's also related to the clutch. Come around over here. You can see down here part of the clutch actuator. When you press the clutch, you can see that that also just barely clears the spacer plates and the engine base itself, and I mean just clears. So it clears, there's room, it doesn't touch, but just barely. So if this engine moved at all in any direction, I'd have an issue, but where it is right now, if it were locked down, bolted securely, everything is going to work. So I'm very pleased with the way this turned out. It's just mock-up stage. Obviously this tractor is being painted. You've probably seen my hood that's already pre-painted. I was excited about checking out the color scheme, so I've done that. But I want to get everything mocked up before I continue the painting, and the dash is going to be all different. If you look at the dash now, I pulled the clear coat that was all corroded off, and I was hoping to preserve some of this nice shiny paint underneath, but a lot of it got peeled away with the clear coat, which is okay, because basically this is going to remain a light switch. This is going to remain the ignition, but it'll be a push start